America is breaking its own people, and nobody at the top seems to care. Listen, I need you to hear this clearly. The cost of living in the United States has skyrocketed so fast, so violently, that the average American now needs an extra $1,237 every single month just to maintain the same life they had in 2019. Not a better life, not an upgraded life, the same one. We're talking about a country where 78% of workers live paycheck to paycheck, where rent has surged 31 to 70% depending on your city, where groceries are up 25%, utilities up 29%, car insurance up 50%, and medical premiums just hit $24,000 a year for the average family, more than most people take home. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. People aren't struggling. They're drowning. They're suffocating. They're being economically crushed. This isn't mismanagement. This isn't temporary inflation. This is structural. This is deliberate. This is the American dream being priced out of existence in real time. So if lately you've been feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, angry, stuck, or barely holding it together, you're not alone. Millions are reaching their breaking point at the exact same time. And today, we're going to talk about why and what comes next. You know, what's wild is that people keep asking, why is everyone so tense? Why is everyone snapping? But they don't seem to understand that what we're living through right now isn't just hard times. It's a full-blown structural collapse of affordability in America, and we're watching it unfold in real time while being told to just budget better. And the truth is, the pressure isn't coming from one direction, it's hitting people from every possible angle at once. Over the last 36 months, consumer prices have risen more than wages in 72% of major U.S. metro areas, and it's not the basic 2 to 3% inflation we grew up hearing about. We're talking 20 to 40% increases on necessities like rent, groceries, childcare, utilities, insurance, and transportation all at the same time. You see these TikToks, these breakdown videos, these people just venting into their phones because they don't have anyone else to turn to, and you realize this isn't just individuals struggling, this is a national emotional breaking point. It's the simmering exhaustion of an entire working class who keeps being told they're doing something wrong. Meanwhile, corporate profits in 2024 hit record highs over $2.8 trillion. The highest in U.S. history, while household savings hit a 15-year low. And what's even more disturbing is how normalized this has all become. People think it's normal to have 2 jobs and still not afford rent. They think it's normal to live with roommates well into their 30s and 40s. They think it's normal to ration groceries, skip medical care, or drive on bald tires because they can't spare the money. This isn't normal. This is a society where upward mobility has frozen solid. It's the American dream slowly dissolving in front of us. And the craziest part? The system is designed so that the people struggling feel like failures instead of victims of a rigged economic model. People aren't snapping because they're weak, they're snapping because they're drowning. And every year someone adds another brick to their backpack. They're working harder, earning less in real value, and feeling like no matter how much they grind, they're being pushed further from the life they were promised. And that's exactly why this conversation has to happen, because the breaking point isn't coming, it's already here. Something a lot of people don't realize, and honestly, most politicians hope you never realize, is just how systematically engineered this cost of living crisis really is. It's not an accident, it's not temporary, and it's absolutely not something you can side hustle your way out of. What's happening is the convergence of 3 massive economic forces that economists have been warning about since 2018. 1. Wage stagnation. 2. Profit-driven inflation. And 3. Collapsing housing availability, which together create a situation where even middle-income Americans are slipping downward fast. Let's talk rent for a second, because most people don't grasp how catastrophic the numbers actually are. Since 2020, rents in the U.S. have risen an average of 31%. But in cities like Miami, Phoenix, Austin, and Nashville, increases have been between 45% and 70% all, while real wages adjusted for inflation fell for 3 straight years. And it's not just housing. Grocery prices are up 25% since 2020. Car insurance is up 33%. Electricity is up 29%. Medical care costs are climbing again after a brief dip, and the average family health insurance premium now sits at $24,000 per year, more than the median worker earns in take-home pay. People don't talk about this part either. Nearly 47% of Americans now spend over 30% of their income on housing alone, which officially classifies them as cost-burdened. That means the majority of working adults are one unexpected bill away from falling into debt spirals they can't climb out of. And if you think this is just millennials or Gen Z complaining, it's hitting retirees too hard. Over 60% of adults over 55 have less than $50,000 saved for retirement, while the cost of living for seniors has risen faster than any other demographic. That's why you see 70-year-olds driving Uber, greeting at Walmart, working bagging jobs because the system they paid into for decades no longer supports them. So when people say Americans are at their limit, they're not exaggerating. They're speaking from a place of lived, relentless pressure that compounds month after month. And the most chilling part? We're only at number 9. What almost nobody is prepared for because it crept in so quietly you didn't notice until it was too late is how the hidden, non-negotiable costs of simply existing in America have exploded to levels that would have been unthinkable even a decade ago. And now they're swallowing people whole. I'm talking about insurance, utilities, fees, fines, subscriptions you never signed up for, maintenance charges, service adjustments, and all the tiny financial leeches draining people dry month after month. The average American household is now paying $1,237 more per month for the exact same life they had in 2019. And that's not a dramatic figure that's straight out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But what's truly shocking is how much of this increase isn't tied to consumer choice. It's tied to corporations quietly padding their profits by hiking prices under the camouflage of inflation. Car insurance alone has risen over 50% since 2020, the fastest increase ever recorded. And it's not because people are crashing more, it's because insurance companies have found the perfect excuse to balloon premiums with zero oversight. Meanwhile, utilities that used to be manageable are now crushing families. Electric bills in some states have jumped 60 to 90% in under 2 years. And in areas with data center expansions for AI and cloud processing, prices are spiking far beyond the national average because residential customers are being forced to subsidize corporate energy use. Even water bills are rising faster than wages, with some cities increasing rates by 30 to 50% to compensate for failing infrastructure. And let's not forget medical costs, which have quietly become a second mortgage for many families. A single urgent care visit without insurance can cost $350 to $900. An ER visit easily hits $3,000 to $7,000 even if you're barely there an hour. People are now avoiding treatment they know they need because they're terrified of a bill that could destabilize their entire life. This is why so many Americans feel like they're drowning, because they are. Every bill is a landmine, every unexpected expense is a crisis, and every year, the cost of just staying alive rises faster than anyone can keep up with. If you feel like you're losing ground no matter how hard you work, it's because the math has been rigged so the average person cannot win. And trust me, this is only number 8. Few people fully grasp the severity of what's happening in the American job market right now, because on the surface, it looks fine. Unemployment is low. Job openings exist. Wages look higher than before. But when you dig beneath the headlines, the reality is far darker and far more alarming than anything we've seen in modern economic history. We're living in an era where people are working more hours, juggling more jobs, and grinding themselves into chronic burnout, yet falling further behind every single month. The truth is that 55% of all new jobs added since 2022 have been part-time, low-benefit, or gig-based roles designed to keep payroll costs down while making workers shoulder all the financial risk. Employers have quietly shifted away from full-time employees because part-time workers don't require health insurance, retirement contributions, or stability. Meanwhile, real wages adjusted for inflation have flatlined or fallen in over half the country, meaning people are technically earning more, but purchasing less. And here's the part most people never hear about. 76% of workers hired in 2024 are earning less than the person who previously held their job. Companies are literally downgrading salary bands and tightening labor budgets while reporting some of the highest profit margins in decades. Layer that with the rise of automation and AI replacing mid-level jobs, not just factory roles, but office, administrative, legal, financial, and customer service work, and you end up with a workforce being cornered into unstable, unpredictable income streams. Job postings now openly demand bachelor's degrees, 3 years of experience, proficiency in specialized software, and sometimes even weekend availability for roles paying $17 to $19 an hour, which is below a livable wage in most metro areas. The average American needs $68,400 a year just to maintain a basic standard of living, yet the median wage is still barely $48,000. No wonder so many people feel like failures. They are being crushed by a job market that demands everything while giving almost nothing back. And the psychological toll is enormous. Burnout rates have skyrocketed, especially among millennials and Gen Z, who were told that education was the key to stability only to graduate into debt, stagnation, and a work culture that treats humans like disposable assets. People aren't losing motivation, they're losing hope. And if this is what number 7 looks like, you're not ready for what comes next. What's becoming impossible to ignore, no matter how hard the media sugarcoats it, is how aggressively the American transportation system has turned into a financial trap, draining people dry just for the privilege of getting to work. And the craziest part is that the average person doesn't even realize how drastically the numbers have changed in such a short time. Think about this. The average used car price in 2019 was around $20,000. Today, that same car, older, with more miles, sells for $27,000 to $31,000, and that's considered a deal. New cars? Forget it. The average new car payment in America just hit $748 per month, while the average used car payment is over $533. And this is before we even talk about insurance, which is where the real gut punch comes in. Auto insurance premiums have risen over 50% nationwide since 2020, and in some states, Florida, Colorado, New York, they've shot up 80 to 110% even for drivers with perfect records. People are literally being punished financially for doing nothing wrong. But the transportation squeeze gets even darker when you factor in repair costs. Because guess what? The average repair bill has risen 36% since 2021, and dealership service departments are charging labor rates of $140 to $240 an hour, making even minor repairs a budget crisis. Batteries for hybrid vehicles can cost $3,000 to $8,000, and a simple brake job that used to be $250 now easily hits $600 to $900. Public transportation? In many cities, it's unreliable, unsafe, or non-existent, forcing people into car dependency, whether they can afford it or not. And don't forget gas prices. Even when they go down, they never actually go back. Americans spent an additional $79 billion on fuel in 2024 compared to pre-pandemic years. You add all of this together, and suddenly transportation isn't a line item, it's a second rent payment. People aren't driving less because they want to. They're driving less because they can't afford to move. More and more families are sharing one car, walking miles to work, risking unsafe situations because transportation has quietly become a luxury. And here's the brutal truth. When transportation collapses, livelihoods collapse with it. You can lose your entire financial stability over a broken alternator now. This isn't just inconvenient, it's terrifying. This is what pushing people to their limits looks like in real time. Something that should absolutely terrify every American is how quickly our food system has become financially inaccessible, and it's not just inflation. It's structural, it's intentional, and it's hitting low and middle-income families with a force nobody alive has ever seen before. You've probably noticed yourself. You walk into a grocery store and somehow buy nothing yet. Your receipt still shows $78. Items that used to be cheap safety nets are now borderline luxury goods. Eggs that were $1.30 a carton are still hovering between $4 and $7 depending on your city. A pound of ground beef that once cost $3 is now $6 to $9. Cheese? Forget it. Even the generic store brands are creeping towards $6 and $7. But here's what most people don't know. Major food corporations have increased prices far beyond their rising costs, resulting in record-breaking profit margins. This isn't inflation, it's greedflation, and economists have openly admitted that over 53% of grocery price increases came from corporate markups, not actual economic necessity, and the shrinkflation is out of control. Cereal boxes are 20% lighter, chips are mostly air, Gatorade bottles shrank from 32 ounces to 28, toilet paper rolls have fewer sheets, ice cream tubs are smaller. You're paying more and getting less, and it's happening across every aisle in America. Meanwhile, food insecurity is exploding. In 2023 to 2024 alone, the number of U.S. households struggling to afford food jumped to 44 million people, the highest number ever recorded outside of a major recession. Even families with 2 full-time incomes are visiting food banks, and food banks themselves are collapsing under demand they've never experienced before. School lunch debt, something that barely existed 15 years ago, is now a $120 million national crisis. Kids are literally being denied meals because their parents owe $15. But the darkest part? Healthy food is becoming completely unattainable. Fresh produce has risen 29% in 5 years. Organic options are laughably priced. People are turning to cheap, ultra-processed foods not because they want to, but because they can't afford anything else, creating a public health time bomb that will explode over the next decade. And here's the real kicker. Americans are spending more on groceries while consuming fewer nutrients. The system is designed for you to pay premium prices for declining quality. When people say they're at their breaking point, this is why. Eating shouldn't be a financial crisis, yet here we are. What's becoming more alarming by the day, and honestly, I don't think people understand the magnitude of this yet, is the absolute collapse of healthcare affordability in America. A collapse so severe that millions are now one medical bill away from bankruptcy, homelessness, or lifelong debt they can never escape. And the bleak reality is that this crisis isn't coming, it's already here and accelerating. Healthcare costs in 2024 to 2025 hit their highest levels in recorded U.S. history, with the average family health insurance premium climbing past $24,000 a year, which is literally more than the median take-home pay for a single American worker. Individual insurance? Forget it. The average monthly premium for a self-employed person is now $530 to $980, and that's before deductibles. And the deductibles are where things get horrifying. High deductible plans now average $8,500 for individuals and over $17,000 for families, meaning most people are paying full price for care throughout the year, even though they have insurance. But the real nightmare is what everyday medical procedures now cost. A simple ER visit, no tests, no imaging can run $2,000 to $5,000. An ambulance ride, even half a mile, is often $1,200 to $3,500. A 3-night hospital stay? That's $18,000 to $62,000, depending on your zip code. And God forbid you need surgery. A routine appendectomy is now between $33,000 and $58,000 with insurance, and double that without. People are literally refusing cancer treatment, skipping life-saving medications, rationing insulin, or avoiding emergency rooms while in active medical crisis because they're terrified of financial ruin. We now have 100 million Americans in medical debt, nearly 1/3 of the entire country, and debt collectors are targeting families with payment plans of $5 a month for 36 years. And here's something most people don't realize. Private equity firms have quietly taken over emergency rooms, urgent care centers, and specialty practices, stripping them of staff, cutting resources, raising prices, and maximizing profit while patients wait hours for care that used to take minutes. Nurses are fleeing the profession in record numbers, hospitals are chronically understaffed, and wait times for basic care have exploded. This country is reaching a point where healthcare is no longer a service, it's a luxury item. And when people say they feel like they're suffocating, healthcare is one of the hands around their throat. If this is number 4, imagine what's coming next. By now, It's impossible to ignore how quickly the American financial system has transformed into a predatory maze, deliberately engineered to extract every last dollar from workers who are already barely hanging on. And what most people don't realize is that this isn't some random coincidence. This is an economic structure built on fees, penalties, interest, late charges, and credit traps designed to squeeze people the moment they slip even slightly out of line. Credit card debt just crossed $1.34 trillion, an all-time high, and the average interest rate is now 21 to 29%, which makes it nearly impossible for anyone carrying a balance to ever pay it off. Miss one payment? You're hit with a $35 late fee, an APR hike, and a credit score drop that raises the cost of everything else in your life. And banks aren't just profiting, they're feasting. Overdraft fees, which were supposed to be curbed, still generate $7 billion a year, and some banks quietly reshuffled their policies so they can charge customers multiple overdraft fees in the same day. Car loans? Interest rates are at 7 to 14%, making even modest vehicles unaffordable. Mortgages? Many people aren't just priced out, they're locked out entirely unless they have near-perfect credit and stacks of cash. But the real silent killer is something most people never think about: credit score inflation. The average score required to qualify for basic loans has risen dramatically, meaning you now need a good score just to access what used to be average financial products. And because so many Americans are buckling under high-cost living, credit scores are dropping nationwide, creating a vicious cycle where people need credit to survive but can't afford the cost of borrowing. Meanwhile, predatory lenders buy now, pay later apps, title loan companies, payday lenders are exploding in popularity because people are desperate, and each one of these systems traps users in long-term, interest-heavy repayment loops. Even utilities have joined the game, reporting missed payments to credit bureaus, ruining people's financial reputations over a $72 electric bill. It's not just a cost of living crisis, it's a financial entrapment system. Americans are being charged for being poor, fined for falling behind, punished for trying to catch up, and penalized for trying to breathe. And the tragic part? Most people think it's their fault. Most people think they're failing. When in reality, the system is working exactly as designed to drain the working class dry. Just wait until we get to number 2. Nothing, and I mean nothing, captures the severity of America's cost of living crisis more brutally than what's happening to housing. Because this is the moment where even stable, hard-working two-income families are realizing that the system has quietly pushed them out of the possibility of ever owning, or in many cases even renting, a decent place to live. And the shocking part is that this isn't just a market correction or a temporary affordability dip. This is a historic, structural failure where supply, demand, policy, corporate greed, and speculative investment have collided so violently that millions are being displaced in slow motion. To grasp the magnitude, the median home price in the U.S. has surged to nearly $420,000, while mortgage rates bouncing between 6.5% and 8% have pushed monthly payments to levels 70 to 100% higher than they were just 4 years ago. A mortgage that cost $1,600 in 2019 now costs $3,000 or more, even for the same home. Rent isn't any better. Nationwide rent has risen 31% since 2020, with cities like Miami, Tampa, Nashville, Las Vegas, and Denver seeing increases between 40 to 70%, effectively pricing out entire populations who have lived there for generations. And here's the truth most people don't know. 1/3 of all home purchases in 2024 were made by corporations, private equity firms, and institutional investors, many of whom then convert the properties into high-cost rentals or exploit short-term rental platforms. We are living through the largest transfer of housing ownership from regular people to corporate entities in U.S. history. Meanwhile, zoning laws, construction delays, climate disasters, insurance hikes, and soaring material costs have made it nearly impossible for new affordable housing to appear at a meaningful scale. Insurance in states like Florida, California, and Louisiana has surged 40 to 120%, making even owned homes unaffordable to maintain. Evictions are up 79% in several major metros, with landlords raising rent mid-lease or refusing renewals so they can relist units at higher prices. And perhaps the most heartbreaking statistic, nearly 60% of Americans can't afford to live in the city where they work, forcing hours-long commutes, unstable living arrangements, or cramped multi-generational households. Housing has become a gatekeeper determining who gets stability, who gets opportunity, and who falls into the cracks. And as brutal as this all sounds, everything funnels into the number one issue, the one crisis that is quietly breaking the country's spine. What truly pushes Americans to their absolute breaking point, more than rent, more than healthcare, more than wages, is the crushing, relentless, emotionally draining psychological toll of living in a country where survival itself has become a full-time job and where every system feels designed to punish the average person for falling even a single inch behind. Because at the core of this entire cost of living disaster is a mental health emergency so widespread, so suffocating, and so deeply ignored that it's turning everyday people into shells of themselves. The exhaustion you see in those viral videos, the panic, the anger, the crying in cars, the rage in grocery store parking lots, is not weakness. It's not laziness. It's the effect of living under constant financial threat. And what's shocking is how measurable the damage has become. Anxiety rates have doubled since 2019. Depression has risen 30%. Burnout is at an all-time high, and nearly 78% of Americans report living paycheck to paycheck, meaning every day is a mental chess game of what bill do I pay? What do I skip? What do I sacrifice? The brain is not designed to live in perpetual emergency mode. Yet that is exactly what millions are experiencing. Parents are breaking down because they can't afford groceries. Young adults are grieving futures they were told they'd have. Middle-aged workers feel trapped, watching their dreams shrink while their workloads grow. Seniors who plan to retire at 65 are working into their 70s because their savings have been wiped out by inflation and medical costs. And let's talk about the new American baseline: chronic stress. Stress that shows up as insomnia, panic attacks, migraines, blood pressure spikes, irritability, emotional numbness, or total burnout. Stress so severe people lose relationships, lose their joy, lose their ability to imagine a future that looks any different from their current struggle. People feel isolated, ashamed, and overwhelmed because the culture tells them they should be stronger, smarter, or working harder, instead of acknowledging that the system is collapsing under them. Even worse, social media amplifies comparison culture. Everyone else looks like they're thriving while you're drowning, even though millions feel exactly the same way. And here's the gut-punching truth. The cost of living crisis isn't just draining wallets, it's draining hope. It's reshaping the psyche of an entire generation, making people believe the future is something to fear instead of something to build. This is the true cost America is paying, and it's the one no politician ever dares to quantify. At this point, you have to ask yourself, how much more are people supposed to take? Because what we're watching right now isn't just economic pressure, it's a slow-motion collapse of stability, sanity, and the basic hope that life can get better. And if you're feeling that weight, if you're tired, overwhelmed, frustrated, or scared about the future, trust me, you're not the only one. Millions of Americans are right there with you, quietly breaking under the same impossible expectations. But here's the part they don't want you to realize. The moment people start acknowledging the truth, the system loses its power. The moment you stop blaming yourself and start understanding what's really happening, you stop drowning in silence. So if this video opened your eyes or even just made you feel less alone, do me one favor. Hit the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment about what you're seeing where you live. Your voice matters more than you think, and the more of us speak up, the harder it is for the people in charge to ignore what's happening. And remember this, you're not weak, you're not failing, and you're not crazy for feeling how you feel. You're living in a system that's pushing people to their limit, and you're still here fighting. Stay aware, stay prepared, and stay connected. I'll see you in the next one.